Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm getting ready for Saturday, and just wanted to talk about it a little bit. Just gonna wait for a few more people to hop on. Trying to get used to looking at the camera right now. I'm using my phone for the camera. I don't have a place to mount it. Feel free to join in on the chat. Um, we'll start talking about the severe weather potential here as soon as some more people hop on. But for now, let's just go ahead and take a look at the SPC risk. Um, Basically goes almost from Abilene all the way up into portions of the even North Dakota and Minnesota. It's a very large risk area, but I think once day two comes around, this is going to look a little different. And we'll take a look at some forecast models. Right now, we're just kind of waiting for them to come in. We're all the way up to 38 now. So let's go ahead and let's see. I gotta try to hover over this. Guess it's not gonna hover. 13Z. Alright. To wait a little bit longer for the rest of these to come in. But you can see this large bowling ball upper level trough up here across the Central Plains. And then this other little feature down at the bottom. Got some shortwave patterns in here that are going to be going across, and these are going to be responsible for a pretty good portion of the severe weather that could happen here in parts of southeast Kansas and northeast Oklahoma. But we'll have to continue to keep an eye on it. But it looks like we could potentially have a severe weather outbreak on Saturday. Take a look at the next one. You can see the shortwave approaching the southern plains here, or approaching the Kansas-Oklahoma border. It's going to be continuing to progress east. We're going to have to wait for a few more of these runs to come in. Probably about another 10 or 15 minutes we'll get enough to get into the afternoon hours here. Right now we're at 15Z, so 2 or 3 more hours before we get to 18Z. But let's go ahead while we're waiting on that. Let's go back and look at the 21Z run. And not 21Z, 18Z run. And let's take a look and see what that looked like. And that's Saturday at 18Z. So this is Saturday at 18Z, which is right around noon, 1 o'clock. And you can see this upper level energy approaching this area here near Missouri, Kansas, and Oklahoma. And it's going to look, that's going to be the catalyst for the severe weather outbreak that we could potentially have. Also another area up here, so it's going to be a sort of a bimodal type of an event where you have some stuff up here in western Iowa, up into parts of Minnesota, possibly in northeast Nebraska. But I think the better tornado potential and more supercellular modes may be further south. There's going to be so much going on up here. It's going to be real messy. It's going to be hard to navigate. There's going to be too many storms. Down here, they're going to be more isolated, more than likely. Let's go back to 0Z and see if we've got any more runs in. We're all the way up to 17Z now. And you can see this trough still coming in, so it looks like it's still going to look pretty good. Let's take a look at our low-level jet. And you can see the low-level jet already looks like it's looking pretty good here. Let's zoom in. Oh my gosh, I can't get it to zoom. There we go. So we got this low-level jet starting to kick up right around noon. here across eastern Kansas and parts of northwestern Missouri, and clearly across portions of western and central Iowa. Uh, this over here is going to be where your main low pressure is, but there's going to be another area of low pressure kind of off over here where we're going to have possibly some pretty significant severe weather across portions of northeastern Oklahoma, maybe even north central Oklahoma. But we're going to have to take a look at some of the more, some of the later hours here, but we're not quite there yet. Let's go ahead and look at the surface. We're going to have plenty of moisture available on Saturday. Saturday is going to be a moisture fest with mid to up, even in some situations I saw upper 70s dew points, and it looks like the HRRR is showing the same thing that the NAM was, only a little bit more widespread. And we'll watch and see, but this should continue to push north. All these wind barbs are pointing to the north, so all this moisture is going to advect from down here to up here. So it's going to be a pretty good scenario for moisture. I mean, it's going to be way too much of it. Theta E is a measure of sort of kind of instability, and there's plenty of theta E air across all of southern and central Oklahoma and pushing up into parts of southeastern Kansas and then up into parts of Missouri and even all the way up here. Up here is not as much, but it's still there. But look at all these purples in here. This is going to be a pretty wild ride once we get that far in. If you guys got questions, feel free to chime in on the chat. But all hazards are going to be possible. Tornadoes, hail, and wind on Saturday, it looks like anyways. Let's go ahead and take a look at our severe weather parameters. Did I click on surface-based CAPE? I did. So let's go ahead and click on to 18Z, and you can see the amount of instability is going to be pretty extreme. We're already in, it's only going to be about 1 o'clock right here, and this is already pushing into the 3,700 joules per kilogram range, which is a lot. This is going to be a lot of instability, very unstable, very, very charged atmosphere. Bulk shear, let's take a look at 0 to 1 kilometer, 0 to 6 kilometer bulk shear. Lots of wind shear, especially across this area of eastern and central Oklahoma, pushing up into southern and southeastern Kansas. And obviously up here closer to the 500 millibar trough, there's going to be a lot of wind shear up here. But our target is probably going to be somewhere in this vicinity. There'll be severe weather pretty much in this entire northern, central, and southern plains. But the big focus, I think, is going to be over portions of Oklahoma and Kansas. Let's go ahead and see. We got in the next hour in. We're at 19. So wind shear is increasing all the way up into 51 knots, 51 knots here. And even by 1 or 2 o'clock, we're already starting to see, of course, we're getting some really, really high temperatures, which is a little concerning. But the photographs aren't very big here. The NAM was much more aggressive, but of course we're only at 1 o'clock. So let's continue going here, and you can see it increases quite a bit here. Let's see. Significant tornado parameter. Not very much right now. So the main things that we really like to look at are our upper level winds, and we got this. It's kind of lagging behind by 20Z. This needs to be a little further east, and I think it will continue as time goes on Saturday. And that's going to be the focus for any significant severe weather, particularly tornadoes. And then, of course, you have the low-level jet. We really need that upper-level support in order to get those photographs really large. And when you got a large photograph, you get a lot of turning in the atmosphere and much more potential for tornadoes. Of course, it looks here mostly across central and western Iowa by 21Z, which is, what, 4 o'clock in the afternoon on Saturday. So this looks a little different than what the NAM was showing, but we're still got to wait on a few more hours here. 48 will be 0Z, so we'll have to wait a few more minutes here before those next couple of frames to come into focus here, and then we can get a little bit better idea from the HER of what may happen. Let's go take a look at reflectivity by this time. And you can see a whole bunch of convection over here over central Iowa, and then just kind of starting up over northeastern Oklahoma. So let's see, we're not quite to hour 46, but while we're at it, I'm going to switch over to RRFS, which is a non-operational model, and you can see it's we need to switch to 18Z so we get more hours. It is very aggressive. Let's look at Sunday at 0, not that one. 46, 748. There we go. So if we look at the RRFS, which is usually pretty accurate, we've got storms all over southeastern Kansas and northeastern Oklahoma. It'll be really, really interesting to see what the later models of the the later runs of the RRFS show, because that's going to be. It's going to tell us whether these models are going to be in agreement or not. And it looks like, oops, not 0Z, 0Z. We're almost full here on the HER, and it's not showing a whole lot in the way of development by 22Z here, which is very interesting to me. And then, but the HER is kind of finicky sometimes, but we'll have to just wait and see. Definitely plenty of moisture. We're still waiting. It's got this 500 millibar trough still displaced to the west, which is much further to the west than what the NAM was showing. This is shown way over here in the NAM. And this is not nearly as pronounced here at 850. So it's going to be interesting to see how Saturday plays out. Let's go take a look at the NAM, and y'all can see exactly what I was talking about here. Let me switch back to 18Z, and there was some very concerning signals here. If I can get it to go to the right here. So 500 millibar. So you can see this was overspreading this area a lot more. And 850, there was this area of 850s right here with a low-level jet, and then pretty significant bullseye right here on the EHI, where we were having some large photographs. This is a large one, but it's not as large as what we were seeing earlier. This is a different run of this is the NAM. Let's go look at the NAM 3K. NAM 3K, very aggressive, very, very aggressive. If we look at here, 5.3, much more enlarged photograph on the NAM 3 kilometer. Although the NAM 3K tends to be a little bit more aggressive, so I guess we'll just have to wait and see. And it doesn't, but definitely could be looking at a pretty significant severe weather setup regardless. Just got to wait for the models to kind of come into better agreement to see kind of exactly how this is going to play out. Tomorrow should be much more. We should know much more tomorrow about exactly what may transpire on Saturday. And you look at the significant tornado parameters here for the 3 kilometer NAM, it's been pretty extreme. But then you switch over to the HER and it's not nearly as bad. So you can't really always trust what you see on the models. Let's look at 0Z though. Okay, yeah, this one is actually showing quite a bit now that I actually switched to the correct to the correct run. Let's go click here. This is the significant tornado parameter, which doesn't really mean a whole lot. Our photograph's not that big, but there is a lot of instability. 4,000 Cape plus, which is pretty incredible. You can see all this space right here. That's all Cape. And see, our lapse rates are pretty significant as well, which is basically how fast the air is going to be moving through the atmosphere as it goes up. The faster the lapse rates are, or the higher they are, the bigger the hail will be. So it could be a very interesting day on Saturday. Let's see, now that we've got that, let's look at 850. So we have a decent low level jet. It's not as pronounced as the NAM 3 kilometer. NAM 3 kilometer had a much stronger low level jet down here. But it's still not terrible. It's still tornado potential here. It's just not as much. And we go up here into north central Iowa. It looks completely different. The temperatures and the moisture is not as much, although it is still pretty high for moisture. Not as much instability up there, and a huge capping inversion. So I don't know that much is going to happen right in that area at this particular time frame. Just going to have to keep an eye on it. Let's see, 0.6, plenty of shear, plenty of wind shear. You definitely should have some organized supercells over across portions of northeastern and maybe even central Oklahoma. Let's take a look and see what reflectivity shows. And it shows nothing except for over here in eastern Kansas. Must be a pretty significant cap down here, and there is. Huge capping inversion down here. Or there's little pockets where there's not as much. But that's going to be the story for the day. It's going to be the cap. Whether we get enough of support from up here. See, this 500 millibar, if this was over here, the cap would erode more. We'd probably have a little bit different of a situation. So we'll really have to wait and see. But this is going to bring in cooler air, which is going to cool off those warm layers of the atmosphere up above us, which is what the cap is. And that prevents storm formation for the most part. But with this, if this was over here, it would cool all that off and allow for storms to form. But, man, most unstable cape. I mean, it's plenty of cape, plenty of energy. There's a significant amount of turning in the atmosphere. The SRH is decent, but it's not as high as it is up here in Iowa. This really looks like it prefers the Iowa solution as opposed to eastern Oklahoma, like the NAM does. But we'll just have to wait and see, honestly. Just have to wait and see. If you guys want to join the chat, feel free. But what I'm looking at here is basically some uncertainty. The herd doesn't necessarily agree with what the NAM was showing. And the 0Z NAM is just barely getting going. So I'll be real curious to see what it shows once it gets further down this list of numbers. Because it was being very, very aggressive, and I want to see if it's backed off at that at all, or if it continues to show really significant severe weather parameters. And for some reason my phone's dying, so I think I'm going to lose my camera. Let me go ahead and turn this off, and I'm going to make this fit the screen. There we go. Now you can see the entire screen. SPC has a day 3 slight risk all the way from up here all the way down into central Oklahoma. So I think we'll probably see an enhanced risk up here by Iowa. Less certain now than I was earlier about the enhanced risk further south. Really, it's going to depend on what the NAM 3 kilometer shows and what we see tomorrow. Day 2 will probably be enhanced, probably right up in this area. And then down here will probably remain slight for now. And of course, this will probably adjust a little bit to the east if it was me. But let's go back to here. We will definitely be out chasing regardless on Saturday. And for those of you who saw the community post, I went ahead and set up the GoPro in the back window. So now we'll be able to have a camera in the front and the rear, and I can also use my phone as a camera now, which will be great for you guys because you'll have more options to see the storms, whereas before you just get to look out the front. So we'll have to wait and see what happens. Appreciate everybody who stopped in to watch the live stream, and I'm probably going to end it here, and I'm going to be out doing stuff tomorrow to try to make sure that Saturday goes well. So we're gonna be getting going early on the Saturday and driving up to central and maybe northeastern Oklahoma, southeastern Kansas, and we'll live stream the trip for you guys. And well, we'll just see what unfolds on Saturday. I'm excited to get in a decent chase. Hopefully, it turns out in our favor, and maybe you guys get to see some tornadoes with us. But we'll just have to kind of wait and see what happens. But thanks for joining me here tonight, and I will see you guys probably again on Saturday. Thank you very much, and have a good night.